What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Christmas Day edition of Backyard Play, BYP. I'm your host, as always, Rich Quinones. Feliz Navidad to everyone out there. And we wanted to try to get in a couple minutes today before we have the three remaining NFL games. As always, don't forget, follow me on social media at Rich Q on Q, Twitter, IG, Facebook, and really sincerely appreciate all the views, and you guys been checking out the channel and commenting. And like I said, we love to go back and forth with the banter, hoping to cut a 27 and Q later today with the big man Brandon Jacobs. And then later on tonight, when we get back from being on the road, we'll probably recap some of the games later on today. Kind of a light, obviously, with all the action yesterday, light day in the NFL, and rightfully so. You got three: Green Bay, Miami, playoff implications, no doubt. Miami's laying 3.5. Tampa Bay and Arizona, playoff implications for the Bucks. Bucks laying 7.5. And then you've got Denver and the Rams, 2 4-10 squads, kind of just playing out the string. But yesterday was a crazy game, a crazy day, I should say, in the NFL. I mean, you look at these games, some of them went down to the wire, some had ridiculous finishes. So a couple that I wanted to highlight, obviously in the NFC East, the Giants traveled to Minnesota. That was a game that the Giants had. That's a game where the Giants showed you they can hang with tough teams. Here's the problem with the Giants, though. When you're a team that can rarely make some mistakes, and when you're a team that if you make too many mistakes, you're not good enough to overcome them. And that's what happened yesterday. I thought Daniel Jones played well yesterday. I really did. I thought Daniel Jones from the quarterbacking position played well. I know that's going to rub a lot of Giant fans the wrong way, a lot of the, Daniel Jones haters out there, but he made some really nice throws, made the really nice impromptu 2-point conversion when he scrambled around yesterday late in that game. Saquon got off. Look, here's the thing. You live and die with the blitz, right? And that's what the Giants do. They're a very blitz-heavy team. 3rd and 11, 19 seconds ago in a tie game. You got too many defenders chasing the ball. Jefferson picks up, the bubble screen for 17 yards, a yard or two difference, and that makes perhaps the opportunity that you want to try to kick a 61-yard field goal. Oh, by the way, which was drilled by Minnesota. How many times as Giant fans have we watched teams beat the Giants with late, long field goals? We've seen it. It just seems like 10 of them over the last several years. But there were some good things and there were some bad things. And I'll probably talk a little more about this later on with number 27, because I kind of have a laundry list, which kind of shows you if you make mistakes, if you're not good enough to overcome them, you're going to have games like this. The Dallas Cowboys got back on track. That was a big win for the Dallas Cowboys, I think, from a confidence standpoint, beating the Philadelphia Eagles, even though the Eagles threw out their Gardner Minshew, who I thought played particularly well. I really did. You just don't like some of the turnovers. That's what kills a team. I mean, if you're the Eagles, you still have an opportunity to wrap up home field advantage. One Philly win coupled by a Dallas loss in the final two would wrap up home field advantage. And really the bigger picture for the Eagles, they don't know the extent of Lane Johnson's injury. I mean, you can ill afford to lose him on that offensive line. And I don't know if Jalen Hurts is going to play again next weekend against New Orleans. Maybe one more week to rest. Who knows? Right now, you kind of saw Patrick Mahomes overtake Jalen Hurts in the MVP race. The odds right now, Patty Mahomes minus 500 per Caesar Sportsbook. Hurts dropped all the way to plus 1,100. Burrow and Allen plus 600, plus 1,000 respectively. Eagles, too many mistakes yesterday, too many turnovers. And again, it's very hard to overcome that. A couple turnovers in the final moments late. Dallas made the right plays. Eagles couldn't punch it in late. So that's a nice big win for the Dallas Cowboys. I'd be a little alarmed if you're an Eagles fan. You don't want to start leaking oil, and that defense gives up 40 yesterday, which is just, And, conversely, hey, Dallas gave up 34. Well, really 27 with the pick six early on. Dak recovered. So the Birds sit at 13-2, Dallas at 11-4. The Giants with the loss yesterday, 8-6-1. That tie might be their saving grace, because all they need to do is beat Indianapolis at home next weekend, and they clinch a playoff berth, their first since 2016. And then I don't know what's going on with Washington. I really don't. You watched that game yesterday, and it was almost as though Rivera it was pre-planned that if Heineke was going to struggle, they were going to go to Carson Wentz. And he struggled. They benched him. He threw his helmet down. A lot of nonsense going on with Washington, which was somewhat of a feel-good story. And then, look, you lose a tough game to the Giants last weekend. The officials obviously aided the Giants with some no calls on the Commanders, but they lost yesterday 37-20 against San Francisco. Their record now sits at 7-7-1. 49ers 11-4. You might as well just wrap up Bosa for Defensive Player of the Year. He's been outstanding, 17.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. That doesn't really tell the tale of how much of a disruptive player he is. So that's kind of your picture with the NFC East. If you keep going through some of these games, Cincinnati, look, they held on for dear life late against New England, 22-18. They moved to 11-4. Burrow, fantastic, 40 of 52, 376, and 3 touchdowns. New England falls to 7-8. Carolina, Giant fans, you got what you needed. You needed Detroit to lose that game. Carolina, great job by Wilkes and company, interim head coach. Sam Darnold kind of revitalizing his career over the last month or so. Carolina puts up 37 against Detroit. They beat them 37-23. Lions fall to 7-8. Carolina 6-9. And as crazy as it sounds, in play for the NFC South Division. That's why they'll be watching that Tampa and Arizona game tonight. Arizona, we know there are issues with the quarterback, no Murray, and then Brady's out there for Tampa Bay. So see if you can put up some numbers. As far as I'm just kind of glancing, and I want to gloss over a couple more games. The Bills over the Bears, 35-13. That win clinches another AFC East title for Buffalo. New Orleans still mathematically alive with a win over Cleveland, who was mathematically eliminated. New Orleans improves to 6-8. Giant fans got another gift yesterday. Kansas City beats Seattle 24-10. Kansas City right now slowly trying to find their rhythm, find their groove a little bit. And a lot of times these teams are late bloomers, right? So Kansas City, as it stands, 12-3, champions of the AFC West. They pretty much stayed right there with the Bills, as I mentioned, beating the Seahawks at home. Head-to-head tiebreaker to the Bills. Remember, they lost to Buffalo in week 6. They stayed ahead of Cincinnati, who beat them in Cincinnati in week 13. So the Chiefs right now trying to look a little into the future, win out, and hope the Bills lose once to take the top seed. I mentioned Cincinnati playing really well. Kind of a second half scare, but then they played well early on in that one, dominating the New England Patriots. Right now, let me just give you update on Cincinnati. That keeps them right behind the Bills and the Chiefs in the conference, still ahead of the winning Ravens in the division. Cincinnati's going to host Baltimore week 18 after playing Buffalo there in week 17. So schedule gods, nice job. How about this? How about Jacksonville? Jacksonville that took care of the Jets on Thursday night in a low-scoring, ugly game. The Jags, as it stands, 7-8, first place in the AFC South. I got to have fun with Brandon Jacobs because he mentioned they were a horrible franchise. Right now, 7-8, first place in the AFC. They jumped here by beating the Jets on the road on Thursday. And then you have the Titans get upset, and they lost to the Texans, by the way, who looked like they were making business decisions when it came to tackling. I mean, what's going on with the Titans right now? Tannehill might be done. Henry, still can run, but we don't know about the head coach. We don't know about Tannehill. A lot of question marks down there in Nashville. That's crazy. So should Jacksonville win in Houston and Tennessee loses to Dallas in week 17, which the Cowboys might need that game. Think about that. Might need that game as far as playoff seeding and trying to still catch the Philadelphia Eagles, even though it's going to be really tough to do. The division would still come down to week 18 is basically what I'm trying to say. Baltimore 10-5, and you got the Chargers at 8-6. So they jumped into that spot with the win over the Titans in week 15. Miami later today, 8-6, second place in the AFC East. As far as let me add one more. Last night, Pittsburgh, Pickett to Pickens late. They beat the Raiders, who have just, the Raiders blow leads, man. That's what they do. And it's fitting, right? Because if you really go back and you think about it, and can I also say this real quick? Horrible job. Just a friggin' disgrace by the NFL Network. Since Franco Harris passing, they just build it up and teased a lot of football fans and a lot of Steelers fans. They're going to do the retirement ceremony. And then what happens is they start to do that. They cut away from the video montage, the video tribute. Why? Because they got to pay some bills. Friggin' horrible job by the NFL Network. They should be ashamed of themselves. That's a freaking disgrace. It really is. But in any event, Pittsburgh gets the win last night late and still mathematically hanging around because that's kind of what seems that the Pittsburgh Steelers do. That immaculate reception game ended 13-7. That one ended last night 13-10. So maybe a little help from above from Franco Harris. So that's kind of a look AFC wise. I want to get into the NFC while we have a couple moments before kickoff with these games. So I was thinking about this. When you look at teams that are, what's the one I'm looking for? Leaking oil, right? A lot of times it's the teams that are hot going into the playoffs. All of a sudden, Detroit kind of cooled off. Now Dallas getting a little juju. The Eagles right now maybe feeling themselves a little too much. That defense suspect secondary Slay has not played well. I don't hear a lot of people talking about that over the last month or so. NFC playoff picture. Let me give it to you right now. So this is where we're at. As I mentioned, we went through the AFC. In the NFC, it's pretty much locked up, right? We know which teams are, no matter what, locked up. The Eagles and the Cowboys, right? Boom. Eagles still control their own destiny for the top seed. You want to get home field, you get that all important bye. You got to win one in their final two. So a win or a Cowboys loss wraps up the NFC East and home field advantage. They've got the Saints and the Giants left. And if you're a Giant fan, you do not want the Eagles to need that game to wrap up the season if the Giants trip up against the Indianapolis Colts. That's my biggest fear. Dallas, they kept their slim NFC hopes alive. Dallas needs to win out, and Philadelphia needs to lose out to win the division. Dallas has the Titans, who are pretty much packing it in, and the Commanders, who are packing it in. So you never know, right? You never know. The Giants retain the number 6 seed in the NFC. Okay. So you've got the wild card contenders now battling for that last playoff spot. And that's why the Giants kind of got a gift yesterday with Seattle, the Lions, and Washington. You want the odds, the math to work in your favor, not against you. It's pretty simple. The Giants clinch a playoff spot with a win next week. They've got the Colts and the Eagles. The Commanders stay at the number 7 spot, right? Because Seattle and the Lions lost. They're a half game up on both of those final playoff spots. They finish out the season, Cleveland and the Cowboys, NFC North. Vikings have it wrapped up. They moved the game behind the Eagles for the number 1 seed. Remember now, they need to win out. Philadelphia needs to lose out because the Eagles hold the tiebreaker, beating the Vikings earlier in the season. Minnesota has the Packers and the Bears left. The Lions remain outside looking in. That was a crippling loss for Detroit yesterday. 9th seed in the NFC, lost to the Panthers, a half game back of Washington. Seattle holds the head-to-head tiebreaker over Detroit. So the Lions right now, feel good story, right? Feel good story. Yeah, it's almost 1 o'clock, right? A little hot toddy, not a problem. So at this moment, that feel good story, that loss yesterday kind of crippled them. They've got the Bears and the Packers left, and then Green Bay. Unbelievable, right? The Packers are the number 10 seed in the NFC, still alive in a playoff race, currently 1 game behind the Commanders for the final playoff spot. They play Miami today, right? They've got the Dolphins, the Vikings, and the Lions. So this is where, if you're Minnesota, you don't want to see the Packers in the playoffs because it's still Aaron Rodgers. But a lot of things come down to play of what teams clinched up, where they can't move if they're locked into the seeding. Chicago eliminated. The NFC North is really remarkable. The Bucs, as poorly as they played, Tampa Bay still leads the NFC South by half game. They'll lose the head-to-head tiebreaker with Carolina. They swept New Orleans, which also is a half game back. They'll play Arizona today. Tampa has to treat that game like a playoff game. Carolina, fantastic story. They basically will watch today. They hope Tampa Bay trips up against Arizona. The Panthers need them to lose to take over first place in the NFC South. 2 games to play. Carolina holds the head-to-head tiebreaker over Tampa. They would hold a 3-way tiebreaker based on being unbeaten, I believe, against the Bucs and the Saints, but I'll clarify that. The Saints lose the head-to-head tiebreaker to the Panthers. They were swept by the Bucs. They will lose the 3-way tiebreaker among the clubs should Tampa lose today against Arizona. I know you guys are following. Falcons eliminated. NFC West, you got San Francisco. Fantastic job. Right now, they're the number 3 seed in the NFC with their win over Washington yesterday, 37-20. Still alive in the race for home field, but they need the Eagles to lose out and the Vikings to lose once to have a shot at that. 49ers have the Raiders and the Cardinals left. Seattle, outside looking in. They are a half a game out. Let me check my notes. Half a game out of the final wild card spot after their loss to the Chiefs. Seattle is going to hold a head-to-head tiebreaker over Detroit for the 8th seed. They trail Washington by a half game for the 7th seed. So I hope you guys are taking notes at home. Arizona, the Rams get out of here. And that's kind of where we're at. So everything's kind of taking shape, right? It's basically taking form in the AFC, in the NFC. And this is what the NFL wanted. Meaningful football week 16, meaningful football week 17 with playoff spots on the line. And I've said this so many times over the years, you never want to depend on another team for help. You want to go out and you want to handle your business. And we're going to see if some of these teams do that. And when push comes to shove, if you're a legit playoff team, a legit playoff contender, then you can't front. You got to sell out. The hell with backdooring your way in, even though, look, as fans, you'll take it. You want to be able to get there on your own. And sometimes the best runs, believe it or not, come from some of these teams that backdoor their way in. And it's a war of attrition. The team that's the healthiest and they're playing hot at the right time, those are the scary teams in the NFL. Those are the scary teams come January, come the postseason. So we're going to see how it plays out. All right, we're going to start wrapping up. Kickoff is right around the corner. As I mentioned, we're hoping to do a spot with the big man, Brandon Jacobs, 27 and Q. Also, we might go live later today when we come back on the road. Got some boxing stuff to handle. But as always, totally appreciate you guys checking out the page. Look, I don't ask for much. If you guys want to turn around, subscribe, share, comment, we got some good feedback. You guys are going back and forth with some of these videos and the opinions and the takes. And listen, we appreciate it. You know, critiques, criticism, praise. You don't like my take, you like my take. You want to go back and forth, not a problem. At Rich Q on Q, IG, Twitter. Follow me on Facebook as well. And then the channel itself, Rich Q on Q. All right. So hopefully you guys got a little hot toddy. You guys are good to go. You enjoy your Christmas day. Hope Santa was good. Hoping you guys were not naughty and nice and you got everything your little hearts desired. So we'll talk to you later today. We got a boatload of guests lined up this week. That's why I'm telling you guys, always go back to the page to see the lineup of guests and a ton of football. We're going to get in the NBA. We're going to talk a little hot stove baseball, a lot of stuff to dive into, but we can't do it without you guys. We always appreciate the eyeballs and we always appreciate the support. Have a good Christmas day. And as always, a Christmas Day edition of BYP from our good friends at Played Against Sports. Check them out online. They've got great selections, used equipment, merchandise, throwback jerseys. They're doing a holiday special with the $50 gift card just for $40. If you've got New Jersey mall cards, you can take them to Played Against Sports. Again, check them out online, playedagainstsports.com/Detford as well. And Trax 57, the premier streaming service in New Jersey, based right here out of Atlantic City. All right, folks, have a good one. We will talk to you soon. Always appreciate you guys listening to this edition of BYP.